Sorry, I'm still doing some admin stuff here.
Very good. You have many tabs open.
I know. Aren't I?
Do you always use one browser, Mike, when you work?
I do.
I end
I
up
mean,
with
I'll,
two
I'll,
browsers open, and then I'm like, no, which tab is the tab open on this browser or the other? So I'm building in inefficiency.
I'm going to try this app here, which I just that was loading up YouTube. Somebody was recommending this app,
Oh,
which is a better way to split your screen. I have a huge screen.
oh, sure.
I'm instead of getting two, I got a big long one, but I
Yeah.
don't love it because I can't split the screen conveniently. But this is supposed to be
Oh,
an app that resolves that. So
oh, good.
let's see. No. All of that stuff we don't need. This is all related, I think.
Good, good, good. Mike, can you tell how many people have looked at any of these?
I do, yeah. We have like 5 views or
Yeah.
per, not a ton. I'm going to drop it in on Libsyn finally. I kept that subscription, so we've got a pretty good bank of audio files. I am going to design a nice little card and put that on Libsyn, and I did start promoting it to LinkedIn and things like that as well. So
I was just wondering, a couple of people at AALL, who saw the mall poster were like, oh yeah, I'll check it out. But you know how that is. You're at a conference. Sure, I'll check it out. But do you really? So I was just wondering if we got any
big hits after
additional
ABA.
viewers.
No. Or
But we know
AAA.
Colleen is one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I doing before? Oh, I wanted to just hit record. Get started every time here.
We're still a little early.
A little early.
So we can't talk about anything interesting.
I know. Holding my breath. How you doing?
Good. How about you?
Good. Good. It's hot in here. Air conditioning doesn't kick on in the office until like 7:30. I don't think it's...
Sure. And then it takes a while to cool down, right? Well, I somehow missed the prediction for rain last night. Was kind of surprised at a thunderstorm.
Oh, I must have slept right through it.
It was nice, and it seemed like actual rain, not just a little blast as a storm blows by, but some rain. There's still rain on our backyard table this morning, so it's such a nice thing to see.
Oh, I know. I don't water my lawn. I think my neighbors must hate me. I have a clover field in the front, which is great.
We don't. We don't water our lawn either. And most years, it goes dry in the middle of the summer and then it bounces back. But we have whole chunks of our lawn that are just bare dirt now.
Yeah.
My brothers were visiting. They're like, you have to give them a chance to live,
I know.
But all around the neighborhood, lawns and especially boulevards look like that. It's just been brutal.
Yeah. It's super dry.
Yeah.
I just feel weird it's a drought. I just feel weird about turning on a sprinkler system,
Exactly. We'll put a hose at the base of our trees.
Yeah.
Because we want them to leave. But we don't sprinkle the whole lawn. That doesn't seem right.
It's not like I do water. We've got a little patch of cucumbers and
oh, nice.
I just planted a bush, but Jack Ambrosie's swagger this day, I think.
Yeah. Did you call him Jack? Is that a nickname?
Swagger Jacker, where I steal I steal his energy for.
I see. I get it.
I'm just gonna borrow a little bit from his post today.
I see. Yep, got it.
Scoop.
All right, I'll get hip one of these days. I'm not dead yet.
Did you have a interesting legal research question this week, or was it all admin?
You know, I did have one question from our same guy, actually, who always sends us
really?
interesting questions, but it was a very particular CFR question. And the result, I mean, the answer was basically you just have to read to get to it. So
yeah,
it was a good one. It was about one of these CFRs had a T at the end. So the number was 390.21 T. And he's like, does that mean temporary? I think it might mean temporary, but I don't know. It was in the transportation section. So was it really temporary or something else? And Ed and I looked, you know, and on the descriptions of how to use the CFR and legal research manuals, you know, online, all these descriptions about what a CFR citation is and how to read it. And in the end, Ed just had to go back to the Federal Register where it was first proposed. And that little introductory bit said, this is a temporary.
It is a temporary, yeah.
Yeah.
My memory was that that's a temporary. I haven't seen that in a long, long time, though.
Well, that's just it. And indeed, the questioner, you know, came with, I think it stands for temporary, but I can't find anything that tells me a T at the end of a CFR citation means that.
Was it any chance you remember the citation?
I do. It was 49.
Oh, really?
I don't remember it. I wrote it down. 49 CFR 390.21. And of course, actually that one still sits there. And then there's another one with the T after it. This one at the end should say something about it being suspended.
Texas section suspended effective indefinitely.
Yep, that's right.
So
but if you add a T to the end
so
of that,
I have to add a T here, don't I?
Yeah, and then you'll see that CFR section doesn't say anything about it being temporary, I don't think. No, you'll probably find it in there, but we didn't. Ed had to go back to Federal Register to find it. And of course, you automatically go into Westlaw. I mean, this will be interesting. I'm not sure that we did that because this might, the editorial enhancements might just have a statement about it, but we're using online free resources a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure. "2019 is the last. Is this the Federal Register document you found?
I'm not sure if it was that 82 or 84. Let me see.
It's just the currentness of the database.
Yes. Yeah, that's confusing to patrons too. What does current mean? All right. A federal, it's the 82 Federal Register, 5293.
Document, really? So temporary is not like this thing's 6 years old.
Yeah, well, the federal government moves slowly.
It does not.
As we know.
Are you comfortable with me loading? I mean, we're live on YouTube.
Sure.
Are you comfortable with me loading this up on the?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a good one. That is a good one. I mean, is it?
Yeah, you know, these little things come up, and that's the thing about legal research, I think, is you intuitively believe something is probably true. Like T, that seems likely that would be temporary. but you can't rely on something you're just speculating about. And then you end up embarking on, somewhat lengthy research often. We were hoping to find a general rule, someplace that would say, when a federal regulation is enacted in a temporary manner, the number, section number is followed by a capital letter T.
Yeah.
I think
What does
Ed
temporary even mean? Well, you know what? Let's launch. It's we're at the top of the hour. We always do this.
We always do, don't we?
You start the conversation and forget to announce our start. We're at the top of the hour. This is the Gray Paper Pod. I'm Mike Carlson, with researcher at Gray Paper Legal.
And I'm Karen Westwood, director of the Hennepin County Law Library.
Welcome back, Karen.
Thanks,
we already got started on our conversation of the most interesting legal question of the week. We jumped right into the Code of Federal Regulations, which,
because regulations
to a librarian, I'm sure. Yeah, this is to a researcher, awesome.
Yeah.
You were talking about the letter T following this citation here. What was the question?
Right. So the question was, from one of our patrons, I'm pretty sure that letter T means temporary. It's a temporary regulation, but I can't confirm that that's true. Can you find information that tells me that's the case? And so my colleague Ed and I took this in kind of a more general direction. What does the letter T mean on a CFR citation? So I was saying to Mike earlier, we looked, all around, you go to the first page of the CFR, right, where it explains how to use this volume. We went online to the government websites, Law Library of Congress, all those things that explain how to do federal regulatory research, looked at the Blue Book, looked at legal research manuals. We were not finding anything that indicated what the letter T would stand for in a citation. So Ed had to do the old, I don't know if we'd call it an old thing, but he just tracked back to the Federal Register entry that introduced this temporary regulation, and the front matter that discusses the introduction of the regulation indicates that it's a temporary regulation. So we could confirm that T stood for temporary, but it was slightly unsatisfying, because we wanted to know if whenever you see a T on a regulation, does it stand for temporary? So I was saying to Mike, I feel like this is one of these things where intuitively you think, yeah, T must stand for temporary. But when you go to figure it out, you can end up spending quite a bit of time.
Yeah, I haven't. When you said that, I thought, oh, it means temporary, but I don't remember why or how I came to believe that was the case.
Right.
It's been a long time since somebody's asked me that question. I was just looking at this section on both the ECFR website, which I love.
Yeah, that's great.
Very cool resource. And on Westlaw, they have the same credit information. Both the Federal Register documents are there at the very bottom. Yep. Westlaw adds in, some other things, the full regulatory history, and as well the statutes which authorize in this case, it's what agency are we at here?
I think
the authorizing statutes are in here as well, which is kind of cool. So that makes it pretty easy. Yeah, but I wouldn't have guessed to go to the 2017 version of the Federal Register to find the fact that this was temporary. Any idea? I don't recall. I guess I can imagine or guess why you'd create a temporary. But usually when you think about the administrative process, there's a notice of proposed rulemaking, there's a comment period, and then there's a final rule, which becomes the new regulation. What's I don't recall what the temporary rulemaking idea is meant to accommodate.
I can't remember either. Let's see this little section from The CFR, I mean, the Federal Register explanation basically is saying the temporary provisions read almost exactly as the regulations in existence on January 13th, 2017. The day before URS 1 becomes effective. That must have been some part of the statutory or regulatory scheme. The only differences are the T notation in their section designation, which denotes them as temporary provisions within the CFR. And then there's some new paragraph designations to align with current guidelines for publication in the CFR. That doesn't really tell us why this particular one was designated as temporary. It does seem strange. I'm guessing it has something to do with comporting with the code. Maybe they're putting something in place on a temporary basis until an anticipated change in the code occurs.
I think that's exactly right, based on what I'm spotting here in this paragraph on the ECFR website, or this is the Federal Register
Sure.
version. But yeah, that's exactly what it's saying. In consultation with the Office of the Federal Register, is allowing the URS 1 rule, I'm not sure, that's the Unified Registration System final rule, to come into effect, immediately suspending it and replacing it with the temporary regulation. And there's a little description here about what's going on. So that's interesting. I think exactly what you described is why it's there. Now, what I'm going to do here, and why I love the federal website, actually, which is, 5 years ago we would have never said anything like that, probably.
Right.
But it's got
love
this
a federal website.
This is I'm 2/3, this is hundreds of pages long. This is the paragraph we want. I'm going to grab this little bookmark to copy the link. And I'm just going to use that as my when we drop it into the resources for the show notes, it'll direct folks right to there. That's not something you have on the Federal Register and Westlaw even, but I've got this little bookmark to this spot in this large document, which will take our viewers right to the section, which is one of the reasons I just love the Federal Register.
And that's super, because as we all know, those Federal Register pages go on and on and on. You get a citation and you're only partway there.
Yeah, I know.
Then you have to really start digging.
It's a control F for I don't know what the Blue Book equivalent of, you can give a page number, I guess, but actually, can you? How does this work? You got those here.
Sure.
Yeah.
We do still get CFR in print. Just because
you do.
Yeah, partly because every now and again someone just wants to grab one of those volumes that covers the section that they need, and it's really handy to have in print. But partly, in true confessions, it's not very expensive, and it's the most colorful set on the shelves in the library. They come out with a different color every year, and you watch
really?
That's green appearing on the shelf, and then
Isn't that nice? You always see the conservative, and not just conservative, but always the celebration of how much shelf space the legislature has saved us by removing regulations. And it's always a stack of paper. It's always an ugly visual. Interesting to know that I've never been in the print regulations.
Oh, you've got to look. I can't remember the color this year. One year it was hot pink, and then the blue is a really nice, like bright blue, and a really cheerful green. So.
All right. I'm going to ask you to go back into the stacks and take a picture again, like you did last week.
Oh, I could.
I would love to post that as a. that is awesome. Yeah, the whole other head is beautiful. Let it take up space.
Right. Little pop of color in the law library.
Yeah, hot pink. That's awesome. That's a good one. That's a fun research issue. Those weird administrative things are always fun to dive into because there's always a reason for it, no matter how minor or insignificant the notation seems to be. There's I think it's not just research researchers and consumers and the public that has problems with it. My understanding is that the agencies themselves are typically struggling to keep up with how they're supposed to manage these documents.
Yep.
Some time ago, I'm forgetting the name of the agency, says that typically they don't even remember to add in the rule identification numbers on there for
Oh,
the oh gosh, I'm blanking out. What do they call it at the end of the biannually in the Federal Register when they do the
the unified agenda?
unified agenda, right?
Yeah.
Right, where they're supposed to say, here's what we're working on, and
Right,
it produces
exactly.
the
Yeah.
RIN numbers, and but apparently the agencies aren't as good about remembering to properly apply the RIN numbers to their procedure.
Yeah. And I'm sympathetic to it. I mean, when we look as researchers at the volume of words that are
Yeah.
created, ongoing continually by these agencies and trying to stay on top of things, it's kind of impressive.
I was kind of wondering about when I did that CLE yesterday, and
Yeah, tell me about that.
yeah, it was fun. It was kind of working on this idea of the three eras of legal research: the era of print, which the era of search, computer-aided legal research, and current era, which I don't have a name for really. I call it the era of find, but framed by different ideas of who practices the law, not just the technology. But one of the things that we talked about yesterday, and this is what reminded me of it, is that we have a lot of great indexes: the key number system, INID numbers on patents, the SALI tags, the standards, leads billing, things like that we use.
Yeah, all those industry codes. Yeah.
Yeah. And things like RIN numbers. I'm wondering. My thought is that currently everyone's talking about how the large language models aren't going to replace it, that they work together, that you need both in order to really get a good research product. I guess that's true. I honestly don't know kind of what is involved with that. Are we going to need, especially with something like regulatory documents, you just have all of this text that's just, as you say, it's just a ton of it, right? I don't know to what degree we're going to rely on those indexes more broadly. Do we still need it for patents? Are we still wanting RIN numbers or is there some other way or some other technology that we're going to rely on to organize all of this content with the
right? But it just feels like there has to be some kind of construct to organize, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the large language models can do it, but I feel for like human understanding, we just need some kind of context,
Yeah, and I think there's value in framing the the different agencies, the different topics, the different. I think there's even if we've talked about the cataloging systems before too. There's bias involved in that. There's it reveals something about who we are. It's not a perfect system ever, but I think there's some value in saying, this is how we frame our understanding of what's going on broadly, creating that broad taxonomy. And I also suspect, but don't know, that as a for research purposes too, you kind of do need both to make it truly valuable. Otherwise you're just swimming in the ocean, I think.
Right, and grabbing things when you see them with I don't know how you would weight them or understand where they're coming from unless you have some kind of taxonomy. Yeah. Super interesting stuff.
Yeah. Super interesting stuff. That's it. I always learn something when I'm talking to you, Karen.
You learned that there's super interesting stuff out there today.
Yeah.
Well, that was all I had this week. Was not a super active week. I think a lot of folks are on vacation.
Yeah,
frankly.
it's been
We don't see as much traffic. We're not getting as many folks physically in the library. this past week. So I think maybe it'll be a little bit slow until school starts. I think even for people who don't have kids in school, there's something about an academic calendar that changes
I know,
behavior,
The cycle is just hard to we all live in an agrarian society, whether
Exactly.
got to get home to when I was young, I did work on the farm.
Did you? You get home with your
sense.
chores?
Yeah. I didn't live on a farm, but I, along with my cousins, we
Wow.
worked the farm.
Yep.
So it seemed logical to me still.
Yeah.
I had a fun week. It's interesting. Most of my legal research stuff actually is coming from folks who are building, and I think I maybe have mentioned this last week, from the building the new research tools using the large language models. There was an interesting podcast from the New York Times, a program I hadn't heard called Hard Fork, which they interviewed the CEO of Anthropic.
Yeah.
And I learned about my role as I forget. He talked about how they're testing these models, and I'm one of those people who are testing those models. They're like, hey, it's kind of interesting, that the work's coming in for these people, or how does it work? How does it compare with doing it the old-fashioned way? And so I don't know, I may be making myself irrelevant with this work, but kind of fun to see who's building what and participating in the early stages of these new products. So
yeah, that's great.
I wanted to chat about just because the ABA annual meeting is in Denver this week. Are you a member of the ABA? I'm a member of the.
Not. I'm a member of the Minnesota State Bar Association, but not the ABA. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't want to beat up on any bar association because I used to work there. But the interesting article from Bob Ambrogi this last week on a censored article which he published on his website called the "Do Not Pay Controversy Illuminates Urgent Need for Regulatory Reform." What's interesting about this article is that there's a changing in the guard right now. It's the new year for the ABA, so they're seeing new leadership. Leadership which does not love, I think, this idea of regulatory reform. So there's this sort of loud exit from the folks at the from the Center of Legal Innovation, talking about the need for regulatory reform, which I just thought was interesting.
So tell me, in the context of the American Bar Association, I just glanced at a little bit of this the other day. When we're talking about regulatory reform, it's regulations around the certification and work of attorneys, right?
Yeah, specifically, I think
or legal
it's a discussion around Rule 5.4. What they did here, and the remarkable thing to me is that this little article is just a simple 2-minute read, right? That and it's just surprising to me how political this was. I don't get it. I don't truly understand why this is a big deal. Utah's got this regulatory sandbox, they call it, similar to what the you've seen, like regulatory sandboxes and finances as a regulatory sandbox for the law. And they've been doing it for a few years now. Seems to be pretty successful. Hasn't broken anything, hardly any consumer complaints. But it seems to be working pretty well. And essentially what it doesn't abolish Rule 5.4, but it offers an alternative on-ramp. So you can be working with a non-attorney as a partner in delivering legal services. And there's all kind of safeguards along with that. But it's kind of an interesting new model, and I think there's something like 55 entities now who are providing, legal services, even though they're entities that are partly owned by non-lawyer attorneys. This flies in the face of, I had it up here somewhere, Rule 40, or I keep calling this standards. These are Resolution 402, which says, hey, no, this is a couple of years old now, but it says, you know what, Rule 5.4 ought to stand. We believe this is a better way to protect the public. The legal innovators over at the ABA are saying, actually, we need to amend this. We need to be able to do things like what's happening in Utah to create a better regulatory environment. And they argue that the debacle that happened with the Do Not Pay app would have been prevented with a better regulatory environment like the one that occurs in Utah. So I just thought this was interesting. A lot of beating up on the ABA right now by some of the folks that I follow online. Not surprising. But also, I don't fully understand why this is a hugely controversial issue. This doesn't seem like a huge threat to the industry to me. It seems like it's full of opportunity. But that's just my perspective. The reason I brought it into the research arena is because I actually don't have data, right? The idea here is that through a more diverse ownership model, we'll be able to accommodate more consumers, and we tap into this latent legal market, which may or may not exist. We just don't know until we start delivering services, and successful businesses are brought up serving consumers at the other end of the market. So I don't know. I brought up some research references. Again, I'll drop these all into the show notes. But I like this slide. This is from the UK, their digital, their regulatory sandbox, and it's quite complex. But there's a ton of data available in securities, right? So they have this kind of proof of concept stage. You get to do all sorts of testing before you launch. Very, very sophisticated model for from initial idea to launch, and it includes the ability to work with sample data sets, which we don't have. The regulatory sandbox model in Utah is a much simpler 3-step process, right? There's an application that's reviewed, the experiment is monitored and runs for a little while, and then it's either kicked out or it's recycled. So just super simple 3-step process. There's no proof of concept. There's no data experimentation. But I don't know that we have enough to work with. One of the things and I'd be sad to see them go because Bob Ambrosi's article made it sound like this section of the ABA might disappear because it's not a revenue generator and it's politically controversial. So it might go away, which I think would be sad because at least they started to gather some data, which is available on the ABA website. Now I'm sort of looking forward to reviewing some of this. I have not seen a ton of it. But there is they have a page where they've started collecting data, and I thought it might be kind of interesting to for folks to know about that and to explore it, use it for maybe better proof of concept or conceptualizing what a new alternative service might look like. So
yeah. So is the ABA meeting one that you go to, Mike?
I am not a member of the ABA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I am a member of the MSBA, but similar. There are similar political feelings.
Sure.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, people are very protective of their business, right, and also of their independence. So I know we did a CLE a year ago about the new requirement to report pro bono hours, not a requirement to perform pro bono service, but just to report, kind of to your point,
Yeah.
the bar associations don't know really the extent to which people are providing pro bono service, nor does the state judiciary. And so that was one of the liveliest CLEs we did. People were just like, you cannot tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
they're like, well, one of your options is, I don't want to tell you. And that you could do that
Yeah.
too. You just have to do something. Or you can put, I donate cash rather than time, whatever. They just wanted some data. And boy, the resistance, even to what to me as an outsider seems like a pretty small ask. That reaction.
Not a big, yeah. And
Yeah.
and it seems so uncritical to me. I mean, it just, one of the complaints about the alternative regulatory schema is that, well, look, they tried this in Washington, the limited license legal technicians, had zero impact, right? They had to cancel, they had something like 13 LLTs, and so it has no impact. So it's not something that we should invest in. Well, the same argument could be applied to pro bono work as well. If every attorney in the country dedicated a full 50 hours and met their aspirational goal under the rules of professional conduct, it would have no dent. Right? It would have a dent. I mean, it matters, right? Pro bono is good. I'm not saying it's bad. And I think it's valuable to know a little bit about the capacity of professionals to offer those kinds of services. So I'm not against it. But it's the same argument. It's the focus on pro bono to me is also a diversionary tactic, just politically, that keeps us, we have that professional goal. That's how we're going to meet the justice gap. I don't believe it. I think it's there's nothing about those 50 hours that says we're going to meet any measurable objective,
because we can't measure it.
If
people don't report what they're doing, we don't know if anything's making an impact or not. And it's hard to measure unmet need just generally. It's unmet.
It is.
And so you sometimes don't know about it. People don't even inquire if they don't think they can get legal help. I agree. I also think, the approach, we shouldn't try something because it didn't work for someone else or it didn't work the last time. Isn't a good argument where every time is its own time and we can learn from things and try.
Right. Yeah. And the controversy, I understand less. I have a hard time getting my head around the concerns, and I don't know, how, the benefit of the doubt, right? I for most of my colleagues at any rate, to say that, there is concern for the public. The resolution 402, it will look, we don't want those split allegiances. If you're serving your shareholders, that's, and if you have an obligation to do that, I think you have those concerns either way, I think, but that's where the conversation should be focused on. We should not just assume that the rule is there because of that and end of discussion. I think that I'm concerned that the relevancy of bar associations generally are limited by the fact that we stop, at that, it's not an extended discussion. And
I think an assumption that what used to be true continues to be true is not correct. If you're trying to protect the public from charlatans, I just think charlatans look different today than they did in the past. It would do everyone well to keep up with that and not just try to harden the old rules. But interesting. So a little ABA excitement. I wonder what Bob will report after the meeting.
I know.
Because I'm sure
that
he'll
runs
be there,
through the 8th, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I mean, I enjoy the ABA. Their tech show in Chicago every year is fantastic.
Oh, and we get a bunch of their publications. They're a great vendor for us. They're on a business side are easy to work with, which can't be said of all legal publishers. And they do some really nice practical titles that our patrons really enjoy. So yeah, I'm an ABA fan. I'm a fan of lawyers. I think we all get protective when big change is looming in the distance. It's a very human way to react.
Reaction, yeah. So you think it's a little bit of protectionism, these arguments, you think?
I feel like that always kind of comes into it. I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, we don't have protectionism in the same way in libraries, but we have this defensiveness that comes up when new technology is introduced. Well, how is that going to change the way I work? Is that going to eliminate the need for people in librarianship?
Yeah.
And kind of the instinct is to double down on the old arguments and the, I don't know, the way we used to do things. And that just can't survive in the face of new technology. So I see it happening with librarians. No, we have to, devote our, every ounce of effort into protecting the secondary source. Well, I think we need to continue to have the discussion, but we can't say, I need this print book. It's the only way to achieve our research goals. We need to be looking at, at the new technology. And to your point, how do old systems and new systems work together? And be open to entertaining those. So we don't have protectionism in the same way, but I think humans react to change in similar ways.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think at least with librarians, and as we were talking about earlier, that topical indices, those are, we understand that those work and they served a purpose, and it was a thing that did its. And I think if we hold on to it, it's because we were close to it, familiar with it, and know how to use it.
Yeah.
And learning something new once you get to a certain age, kind of feels like a heavier lift, I think. But
sure. Yeah.
But at least in those circumstances, you can imagine. Actually, I don't believe that age thing. I'm going to call bullshit on that. Like. I'm always up for, but I think the transition there sort of it would be bumpy because it was a tool that worked,
right?
And you want to make sure that it continues to work. So I don't know. It just feels a little bit more critical to me, and something like Rule 5.4, which how is it demonstrated any value? If and maybe even harm, right? Because the purpose of the Utah regulatory sandboxes is to expand the availability of services to low-income folks or folks who wouldn't otherwise.
Right.
That's the goal, and so we're trying to remove a block, and so and that's a goal I think that we should be striving towards, and there are the ways to manage those concerns, which I think Utah is doing. I'll make sure that stuff is in the. They bring up the Utah regulatory sandbox screenshots. I did not. I lost it. I'll bring those up. I'll drop those in. You can see how they're organized, which ones are high risk, low risk. You can track the complaints. I think they're doing a good job.
It's really interesting that Utah is a state that's experimenting with that. Here's my geographic bias. Totally. I don't know what state I would have guessed, but I don't think it would have been Utah.
I know. Well, or Arizona.
I'm sure someone knows like why that would be. There's probably something really characteristic, maybe about a vast rural area they're trying to cover with legal services, or something that makes them particularly open to trying something new. But I think that's pretty interesting.
I think they had a fairly progressive team on this, including members of the Supreme Court in
Mhm.
Utah, which obviously influential. And that, and I also wonder if it's a smaller organization, you have less.
Yep.
I forget what the organizational concept is there, but a little bit more fluidity there, maybe because it's a
Right.
smaller constituency.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe easier to experiment with things with a smaller population. I'm sure the legal need is as great in Utah as it is anywhere, but maybe the sheer numbers aren't as large, and so you can engage in these forays into different models.
Yeah. There's a little directory of the approved
Yeah,
entities
cool. Yeah, I'm
there.
gonna go take a look at that. I think that's really interesting.
It is, a little description of who they are. You can look at their applications, and this submit a consumer complaint button is everywhere.
And that would be if you used one of these models and you're not satisfied with the
That's exactly
service.
right.
Yeah,
There's annual reporting.
yeah,
And then for, if you can sort this list by, there's only one high risk, and that's because it's a non-lawyer provided
without lawyer
service without
involvement.
lawyer involvement. That doesn't mean, the reporting requirements are much higher here, and there are
Yep.
lawyers who are experienced in this area who review these applications and monitor this.
Sure.
But this is the high risk entity in Utah is one that helps folks with debt relief, medical debt.
Medical debt. Wow.
There's so many areas of practice where it's just so helpful to have, a non-attorney engaged in. You can see some of these here.
Sure.
Let me go just to the all list here. Immigration.
Oh, sure.
This one, Arizona and Washington, D.C. They're also there, I think, because, as you know, Arizona abolished Rule 5.4. Washington,
Oh.
D.C. amended theirs to look more like the UK rule.
Mm-hmm.
Special needs,
Yeah.
working with a social worker or somebody like that for adult care and consumer
Yeah.
financial issues. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's you
Makes
want
sense.
somebody else on the team who does that kind of thing,
Right. And lawyers, I'm sure, do that, right? Consult with financial advisors and other folks, but to host it all and within one entity seems quite client focused, right?
Yeah. And so there's a bunch of them here. There's one in particular that I thought was Timpanogos, I think it's called. They were legal navigators in harassment proceedings, I think is what they did.
Really?
But
wow.
You can imagine those folks, judges referring to them, and they're sitting down with the provider and said, I can't give you legal advice, but here's how you should fill out this form and how you should talk to the judge.
Right.
It looks a lot like the providing of legal services. And I suspect, and I'm sure that was going on before this, this came into being, and Support just gave it the approval to just take that extra step and say, okay, we're gonna fill out this form this way, and without having to fear a retribution from the bar or from the regulatory authority, or and also not having to do that extra confusing to the consumer disclaimer, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, interesting stuff. But Utah's the only state that you know of with this kind of sandbox approach.
Yeah, I think there are a host of other states who've been investigating it, but that's subject to the same political controversy that.
Of course, yeah.
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 I think the outgoing, I think Bob Ambrosia's website said that the outgoing head of the Center for Innovation at the ABA was heavily involved in the Arizona
Oh,
uh,
that
alternative
rule,
business
yeah.
model,
Mhm.
changes to the rules there.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm only aware of it having happened in Washington DC has had it for a long time. They just
Oh, really?
changed the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll have to take a look at the credits field there and find out the
Yeah.
history. But
We
yeah,
know how to
much
do that. Yeah.
yeah, much longer. But the rule looks different in Washington DC than it does than it varies from the model rule.
Sure. Yep.
Um, and there are other rules too, which you zealous advocate, you still have to be competent, zealous,
Right.
so all of that still matters.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure still why. I mean, I get the resistance to change. I feel that myself sometimes, but
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, just maybe more information and conversation will, the
yeah,
familiarity will help people, you know,
get
soften
get
a
it.
little bit. Well, I'll be anxious to hear what the outcome is of the Denver meeting. So
Yeah.
keep us
We'll keep
posted.
track of that. We have
Yeah.
a local former staffer for the Bar Association recently moved over to the communications department at the ABA. Very excited for Nick
Oh,
to have done that. So maybe we've got our guy on the inside now too.
yes.
But yeah,
Right.
most bar associations have delegates to the ABA as well. So there are other resources there if you want to get on the inside, even if you're not a
That's
member.
right. Yep. Well, cool. What are you looking forward to next week, Mike?
What is next week? Still on the fence about headed up to the Solo Small conference in Duluth is this week.
Yeah.
I've got miscellaneous personal and business obligations hanging on, so I have not cleared off my calendar yet for that. But I usually like to. It's kind of fun to go up to Duluth and
Oh, always
chat with.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a fun event, the Solo Small conference, and it's kind of my market. So I was hoping to get up there and
Sure.
enjoy a brown ale.
Yes, I saw
With
they
my
were
colleagues at
having a
the
little social event at Hoops Brewery.
yeah.
Mike, you know what interests me? Always what's being served at the local tap room.
That's right. What about you? You got anything happening in this upcoming week?
Well, I don't think this next week anything real big. We took down our display about Japanese incarceration during World War II. And I'm already looking forward to November when we'll be getting, actually at the end of October, we'll be getting a display from the American Bar Association on Jewish lawyers in Germany during the Holocaust. And we'll have that up through the month of November, which is a big anniversary of Kristallnacht. I can't remember what year anniversary it is, but so we'll have another one of our national speakers for that, for a CLE that month. So we're enjoying the space that we have without being blocked by large panels for now, but looking forward to October when we'll get another display. Yeah.
These things take time. It's a lot of work to put together something like that.
Yeah, you do have to plan ahead, which is not my forte. So, but I'm working on it.
Karen, thanks again.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it. I want a picture of the hot pink CFR. If you, I know you have a job, but if you happen to get out into the stacks,
it just takes
send
me
a
a
photo.
minute to walk out to the CFRs. I can't remember what color they are this year, though. I may have to send someone down to our storage vault for the prior year to get the hot pink.
No, I
I'll see. Whatever color it is, it'll be bright.
All right. Thanks,
All
Karen.
right. Have a good afternoon.